Hi, welcome to Get Started with Arduino. I'm Philip Lindsay, and over the duration of this course you'll learn how to get started with the Arduino and use it to interact with your environment and then take some sort of response as a result. Whether you have no background in electronics or programming, or if you have a background in software but don't have any experience in hardware, this course will have something for you. So let's get started. We'll take a look first at the Getting Started with Arduino kit, which you may have purchased from the Maker Shed. If you haven't, we'll also cover the components that you'll need to acquire to complete the course. First of all, we have our Arduino Uno in a nice little package, a breadboard, which is how you put components together, some jumpers to connect them together, and then in the anti-static bag we also have some more components. We have some LED lights and some resistors, and you also have some additional parts in there which we won't use for this course. And then finally we also have a USB cable. Now in this course, rather than using the transparent breadboard, we'll be using this one just so you can see it more easily. So now that you've got the parts, we can proceed with some of the safety tips that you'll need to know. So talking about safety, I've run this workshop 3 or 4 times now, and we haven't had anybody die, so it's pretty safe. There are some things that you need to keep an eye on with your Arduino though, just to make sure that it has as much fun as you do. The first one is that you need to avoid metallic surfaces. So if you have your Arduino, then you want to make sure that you don't put it on a metal laptop or on a metal bench top. Also, you want to make sure that when you have something that you want to change in your circuit, that you don't make a modification to the circuit on the breadboard until you've unplugged the Arduino from your computer. And you also want to make sure that you don't ever connect the ground and the 5 volts or power to each other. If you do, then depending on what your laptop is or your computer is, some machines will shut down, other machines will say, hey, there's something wrong with the USB, I'm going to stop making it work. So normally disconnecting and reconnecting it will work, or rebooting the machine. But that's about the only way that you can damage the computer. So just make sure that if you're going to change the circuit that you unplug the USB first. So now that we have all these parts, let's take a look at our Arduino and take it out of the box. Now the important thing to know if you don't have the Getting Started kit is that you will need to get an Arduino or an Arduino clone and a breadboard of some sort, and then also an LED. We'll be using a red one for most of our demonstrations. They're pretty easy to find around the place. And then also one each of the resistors in this pack, which are the 220 ohm and 1 kilo ohm resistor, and we'll get into more details on how you can tell those later. And then you'll also want to have probably the jumper cables as well. So let's take a look at a real live Arduino. So the Arduino was designed in Italy by a group of professors at a design school there who wanted to make electronics accessible to their design students so that they could create interactive works. So there's a strong focus in the presentation on design. You even get some lovely stickers. And then we have the actual Arduino itself. So there's a number of parts on the board that you'll become familiar with. The first one is the USB connector. This is where we'll use our cable to connect it to our computer. By default, the power for the Arduino board will come through the USB cable. You can also connect it to a wall wart or other sort of power adapter if you need to later on, so you don't need to have the laptop connected to the Arduino the whole time. This part here is called a microcontroller. This is the brains of the Arduino. So essentially it makes it like a little computer that can sense the world around it and then take some sort of reaction as a result. And then on this side, we have a set of sensor inputs and outputs. These are digital inputs and outputs, so that means that they can be turned on or they can be turned off, or you can detect whether something is turned on or detect whether it's been turned off. And then on this side we have analog inputs, and this means that you can detect a change in voltage. So certain sensors will return a value between 0 volts and 5 volts, and you can detect that change there. And then finally we have the power connectors along here. This is where if you need a connection to ground or a connection to the 5 volt power supply for say a button or a light, you can make that connection along there. One thing to note, there is 3 ground points labelled on the board, ground there, and then ground here and here. Those 3 points are all connected together, so if I say, okay, make sure you connect this to ground, you can connect it to any one of those 3 points. And the other components on the board you don't need to know about in order to use it, and we might go into a little bit more detail on that later. One final component on the board is the reset button. In general you won't need to use it, but if you've got a sketch running or a program running on your Arduino and you want it to start again, you can press the reset button and that will make that start again. Some other resources are available to you in addition to the course. So if you want to have some help as you're looking, you can go to the main Arduino site, which is at arduino.cc. Make sure you go to arduino.cc and not one of the other domain names. And on that site you'll find tutorials and other information. There's also the playground where people have contributed suggestions on how to connect particular sensors to the Arduino and how to solve specific problems. So if you've got a problem that you want to solve, then check out the playground first, because quite often someone else has solved it for you. And then there is also the Arduino forum, and it's full of a bunch of friendly people who will help you. If you've got a question, you can post, or you can search through the extensive archives of other people who might have encountered your problem before. And now that we've given you a quick introduction, we're going to move on to our first hands-on part, because I'm sure you're anxious to get something started. So we'll move on to our hands-on part 1, where we'll look at installation of the development environment and making an LED on your Arduino Blink.